Hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Finding Brave. How are you doing? How is everything going? It's been one heck of a ride, hasn't it? For all of us. There's silver linings, there's suffering. It's been something else. I tend to focus on the silver linings because that's how I stay holding it together. But I'd love to hear from you about how things are going for you right now when this comes out. And I'm so excited. You just hang on to your hats, people. Justin Brady's in the house. Woo! And first of all, what a voice. You're just going to love it. And Justin, I was on Justin's show. Was that a month ago now that came out, Justin?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me, Kathy. I
Oh, of course.
don't know when they all blend in
I
together.
know they do.
Yeah,
I have to
I have no
listen
idea.
again. What did we say? But I remember it was in the middle of my book launch. The questions you asked were so, there's not much that stumps me generally in terms of what I generally talk about. You asked me questions that I had to just pull back and say, wow, I've never even thought of that. And what a mind you have. So thank you for
That's very
joining.
nice. I'm sure my mom's proud.
All right, people, let me tell you about Justin and what we're talking about today. Justin can talk about a lot of things: communication and culture, leadership. You've interviewed so many illustrious people. What episode are you on your show, the Justin Brady Show? Again, you
I,
don't know.
I have
Uh,
no idea. It's at least, I mean, I could check, but it's at least a couple hundred or
okay.
probably more than that.
Wow,
I don't
you've done a lot in a couple hundred, just the most interesting people. But we are going to nail down this topic: how we communicate for our small businesses or mid sized businesses and our brands to cultivate the people we really want to serve and also amplify our voice, amplify our message. Is that right? Did I get that right? Is that what you focus on, especially for emerging tech organizations? Yeah.
Yeah, my bread and butter is emerging tech companies. And the whole point of what I do is I cultivate really good stories, what makes them unique, and I amplify that to the world, ideally to millions upon millions of people. So, and like, yeah, I do it for emerging tech companies. You asked before we started recording, why emerging tech
Yeah.
companies?
I didn't get the answer, did I?
Oh, that's right, you didn't. Well, first of all, they're cool. They do cool stuff. But the real reason is so many times I interact with emerging tech companies. It's this company that solved an incredible problem that's extremely difficult to solve. And it
Wow.
blows your mind. But because they are a problem solver and they're so focused on this solution, what they're not focused on and not naturally good at is connecting that idea to people
I see.
in mass.
Wow.
The best example of this is there is a company called Martin Bionics I worked with for a
Hmm.
period. And long story short, they worked on NASA's like exoskeleton spacesuit stuff. And then they worked with a SEAL Team 6 Talos project. I guess the Navy SEALs were working on an Iron Man suit.
Oh, wow.
And it was it was this technology that fit hard surfaces and armor and stuff to people, and people are all different sizes. And so, very long story short, they figured out a way to uh, put this into amputee technology. Really, really amazing stuff. So if you know any amputees, go check out Martin Bionics. It'll blow your mind. It's fabric-based socket technology. And so one of the things they were talking about early on was like, oh, older sockets are like hard, and the socket we have is fabric. It flexes, it moves with you, and we're having a really tough time communicating that. And a lot of people were like, they heard fabric socket, that sounds really weak, it sounds flimsy.
Socket? You
That's
mean like a socket? A
Yeah,
joint
yeah,
socket?
something, yeah, that holds on the prosthetic. Yeah, they
Okay,
call that
yeah.
a socket, or they, some people call it a bucket. I think they might be wrong on that.
Okay.
Long story short, fabric sounds bad, and they were using the image of, oh, it's like a hammock because comfortable. I'm like, yeah, but hammock is also unstable.
Yeah,
And
no, I don't
so,
want a swinging limb.
right, no one wants to swing and be unstable. So one of the things we worked with them on at the time was, let's just use like old technologies, like a wooden shoe, like a Dutch wooden shoe. It does the job, it's stable, but it's
Wow.
uncomfortable. And what you have is the tennis shoe. It
Okay.
moves,
See,
it's
it's a
stability.
metaphor. It's an image that we get
Right.
that's desirable.
Right, exactly. So it's, people like Jay, the owner of Martin Bionics, is a mega genius, and he's amazing
Wow.
at solving problems and helping people and doing so at a great cost. He's incredible. But, they bring in other people to help them communicate that. And so that's what I do for emerging tech companies.
I love that.
And
What a,
PR, I mean, I get them in the press, and I get them found on search. So when you search for something and it pops up, it's because I made sure it popped up there.
You know what I love about that? Lately, I've been talking a lot with guests about values, our core values. And, I'm a career coach. So often I'm helping people understand in your career, you're not just doing a functional job, you are also contributing to outcomes. And either they're going to marry up with your values or they're not. And
Yeah, true.
it's really not too happy when you're killing yourself and the outcome of that company is not something you align with. It sounds like one of your values is let me amplify voices that are making a real positive difference in the world. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Love it.
amplify stories, and every company has incredible stories, and most people um, don't believe that. Like they'll say, "Oh, our people make the difference," but
Oh,
then when you really dig past the surface, you realize they don't actually believe that. But it is true. Like every company does have some incredible stories to tell. They really, really do, but most don't see it.
all right. So let's dig in. So, let's have the audience you can be just starting your business. It can be a mid to small, the mid to large size business. Can you start me with, and we didn't script this, I'm really just asking because I'm fascinated. What do you see are the biggest communication errors or branding errors that companies make? How are they really messing it up?
Well, as far as I'll let branding experts talk about the branding, but 'cause as far as communications, what they're really, really screwing up is they just they get in their own heads. And
Hmm,
like the very first question a lot of CMOs and CEOs ask is, well, I'll actually tell this in the form of a story. I worked with a
good.
company, they're called Accumold. I still work with them. They're my longest client. And their CMO, Aaron, awesome dude. He, he said something about don't waste any time on PR with us because no one cares. No,
Wow.
they make microscopic thermoplastic little parts, like for stuff like this and stuff like this. Um, I'm
Hmm,
NDA through the nose, so I can't tell you who they make it through, but make it for. But it's amazing technology, and when I say microscopic, it is microscopic.
wow.
And they, in their mind, they were way too far removed from the customer. Like
Right.
no one's going to cover us in the press.
Were
No
they
one
fine with that or they wanted you to help them with that?
I've known Aaron for a while, so he's like, "Don't waste time on that." And I'm like, "I'm going to do it anyway." And then I got their CEO Roger Hargens on Bloomberg in 2 months, so or something like that, 2 3 months, something like that.
Wow.
The first one he canceled because there was like this thing that came up. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, we're canceling on Bloomberg," but it was a live interview in Manhattan in their headquarters. It was really really
Wow.
cool. Bloomberg Markets AM radio, and I think it's like
Wow.
2.5 million listeners, something like that. And the thing is, it wasn't no one like a lot of tech CEOs, a lot of CMOs are like, well, no one's just going to cover our technology or our thing we do. It's and the smart ones think that. Some people believe in like the mousetrap myth, like this is the coolest thing anyone's ever seen. All I need to do is show it to a journalist and they'll freak out. That's never going to happen. So, in this case, um, in this case,
Oh my
it
God.
was the other problem. Like Aaron he's so objective. He really gets it. And he's like, no one, and he's a former radio guy. And so he's like, no one's going to care. And the thing was, we didn't pitch the here are microscopic parts. How cool is
And
that?
what did
Because
you
like he
do?
said, no one cares. What we pitched was as soon as Pim Fox, the host of Markets AM, said he made some comment about and skilled trades, blah blah blah, and no one's figured out how to fill the trades gap. That was his comment.
And you
And
heard that. You
and as
heard it.
soon as he said that, as soon as I heard it on the podcast, I emailed him and said, Accumult has figured that out. Here's what they're doing. And then I massaged that interview over the next couple months. And really, they talked about skilled trades, but then they talked about how cool Accumult was for like a long time. It was really, really awesome. So it comes down to these little stories that everybody has that they don't even think are special. Another example from
Wait,
Accumold.
wait. Can I
Oh,
stop
sorry.
you
Yeah, yeah,
for a
yeah.
minute?
Sorry.
And I need to highlight something that I
Please do.
think you did that I want people to listen to. So when you said, so many people think this new thing that I created is whatever,
Oh, yeah.
and I'll hear that. Will you cover us in Forbes? Two things they don't do. They've never read one piece that I've ever written.
Uh huh. Yeah.
They don't have any desire to fill any gaps that I have in what I'm covering.
Right.
Number two, they make them, and I want to know if this is accurate from your perspective. Number two, they make the mistake that the standalone thing that this company or you, the coach, or you, the consultant, or you, the author, have done is enough to get attention. And it isn't. I don't care.
No, it rarely is,
It
right? I mean, it
rarely,
might be if it'll.
maybe,
I always tell new
driverless
clients,
cars,
yeah, right. If it's something mind blowing,
Right.
it might be. But even then, if it's something mind blowing, a true journalist probably isn't going to believe you anyway.
Yeah.
So,
Right. I'll wait till someone else covers it because I think it's too good to be true or
yeah,
crazy or you're
yes,
insane.
yes. And this is what's funny is so many journalists are like, I want to break the news, but then they actually want someone else to cover it first. And that's the difference between like someone who covers that beat and someone who does more commentary or leadership practices. Totally different things. But I tell marketing people and companies, think about it like a match game. Think about your press strategy as a match game. You've probably played like a match game where there are cards on this side and cards on the other side, and they have the same images, and you try to find matches. Yeah. So I always say, act like you have a deck at your company, and the world of journalism has another deck. So really, your goal is twist over the best story in your company, find the best story in your company, flip some cards, go digging, go finding that best story, and then go digging in journalist land and magazine land and TV land and radio land and find the card that matches. In other words, find that journalist who's already writing about what you do or your topic area. So it's not about like so many people just blast these pitches. You've probably gotten these.
I get 500 a month.
Yeah, and sometimes they forget to put your name in there.
Oh no. Hello, comma.
Hello, comma. Delete.
Let me just ask this though. Do you think that if the CEO had been hearing that Bloomberg report about the skilled trade, the trades gap, skill trades gap, would he connect it to what his company is doing? I don't think so.
It's hard to say. And yeah, it's hard to say.
So I think another thing I'm trying to highlight is if you really don't have a big PR team and you're doing this yourself, people, or hire Justin, also listen for the creative ways you are filling a need that has been discussed.
Yeah.
It may not be the way you view your business, but
yeah, jump into the conversation. Right? Rather than trying to strangle someone and bring them over to your side, jump into an existing conversation that's already happening.
That's beautiful.
And I guarantee you it's already happening. There was a new client who I just started with, and I can't talk a lot about what we're up to, but one angle we played up, they're in the Midwest, and one angle we played up was Midwest startups, which is
wow.
Yeah, we found journalists that wanted to write on that. That ended up getting some interest. So
wow. All right. So we're talking first about blunders. Speak about this if you would, Justin, because I see it happen a lot. I cover in Forbes and my podcast a wide range of stuff. But what I find is if I do something like I did recently, I featured an amazing 21-year-old award-winning entrepreneur. And when you read what she has done, Ananya Jain, she's exceptional and extraordinary in 50,000 different ways. But literally instantly after we ran that, I got 20 different pitches from people I represent, or I am 19 and I've done this. What do you think about that? Like so I'm looking for a tip here. If you read something that you think, oh, if they wrote about that, maybe they'll write about my client. Do you hit them 1 second later with your pitch?
But it has to be relevant, right? Like it has to be relevant. Like the fact someone's age and being successful, that's not good enough. It has to be really relevant to the focused topic area. So like, for example, I see this happen too, because I've written for some places too, like you have. So I probably see a lot of the same pitches. But for example, if I'm writing about emerging tech innovations and creativity or something, and I happen to write about like a grocery store, now I'm going to get a lot of pitches for people talking about grocery stores like that. They may have saw or they may have read a few keywords, but they didn't actually bother going to my website or reading stuff I actually wrote. If they would have done that, they would have said, oh, this guy doesn't write about grocery stores. He writes about emerging tech companies, and the grocery store just happened to be a subject in the story.
There you go. So there's the tip I'm pulling out. I know you're excited, and I've made the mistake in my earlier years of just publicizing something because I thought it was so exciting about what I was doing. And boy, did I get some slap down.
Yeah.
Just because I'm a new therapist, nobody cares.
Yeah.
Um,
And I do the same thing. Like I
we get
totally do.
excited.
I still make mistakes from time to time. I still send things, and like I think the other day, uh, Jonathan Schreiber at TechCrunch like sent me an email back, and he's like, um,
Oh,
he's very very direct, and he's basically in a very kind way said, "This is really stupid. Once you have something new, let me know." And I was like,
well, that was
"Well,
nice of him that he said
yeah, it was really
commented
nice.
versus delete in half a second before.
Totally agree. I totally agree."
And I'm sure he'll publish the next one. All right. What else can we talk about in terms of, you talk about unique ideas. And let us talk for a minute about culture if we can, because you said earlier, external communications is not that different from internal communications in a culture. Can you talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to the core,
Right.
right?
Tell
Like
us more.
tactically, of course, it's different, but
Right.
basically, it comes down to and I'm sorry, everybody. I have like allergies today, so I'm like all stuffed up. So I don't normally sound like I'm
Sound good to
like
me.
I don't normally sound like this. Man, that really screwed me up. Woo. Okay, so uh, the same problems are made in internal communications and external
Oh,
communications.
wow.
Like in external communications, the problem is we don't value our own stories and our own messages and our own people and what they believe enough. Therefore, we don't think it's worthy of covering. And it absolutely is. Again, going back to Accumold, they also wrote one of their sustainability guys, their goal was to be zero waste. And when you're a manufacturing company, like especially doing injection molding, there are a lot of like
Right.
remnants,
Right.
and this guy figured it out. It's like an
Wow.
impossible solution because they're also working in very exotic different resins and plastics, and he
Wow.
actually figured this out. It was an impossible solution. He actually ended up helping a vendor of theirs create a business model so he could sell them recycled plastic. Like
Oh
insane
my
guy. His
gosh.
name's Matt Iverson.
Uh,
And we could not
wow.
get anyone to run this. I thought it was the coolest thing ever.
It's so
And
inspiring. And
it
if he
is, it
can do it for
really
his
is.
business, I'm thinking he can help other businesses do this, right?
Yeah, it's so inspiring, and no journalist wanted to touch it because it was just kind of technical, and we couldn't bring it down to. I don't know what the hang up was. We couldn't get it done, and so I said to him, I was like, Matt, I feel like I can't sum this up in a way where any journalist is ever going to run it, and it's going to maybe take me a while to figure it out. So can you just write the piece and we're going to run it as an op-ed? And he's like, well, who the heck's going to run that? I said, I think someone will, and so eventually Quartz ran it, and the amount of exposure they got on that was incredible. But
So
like,
the guy writes too? Matt is a writer as well? Like he
uh,
could write the
yeah,
story?
well, he did write a lot, and it wasn't hard. But for a lot of my clients, I have them write. I just tell them write crap, write a pile of crap. I'll go through and edit it and clean it up. You just get the idea out of your head. That's your job. And so that's what he did.
Wow.
And frankly, his writing was pretty darn good. So I didn't have to do a ton. But again, the problem there was, and not the problem at Accumold, but here's this guy that's not a C-level person. He's the warehouse manager.
Oh,
This is his
wow.
job. But he is the one who figured this out. And so Accumold's leadership is like, yeah, sure, have him write. Let's publish it. Whatever. Like they understood that all people's ideas have value. So they get that.
Oh,
Right. So that's like, not
good.
understanding value, external communications. But internally, I
Mm.
see ideas constantly pop up in an organization that are truly valuable and very well could be the next $1 billion idea. And leadership is just totally, they have the not invented here problem it's not a C-level person. It's not someone who has the technical knowledge. So therefore it's stupid. And if you heard on my podcast 3-4 weeks ago, Cliff Hudson, the former CEO of Sonic
Yeah.
Drive-ins,
Oh,
he had
wow.
a franchisee in a market that was doing their whole frozen drinks program. Like that was invented by a franchisee.
No way.
And some leadership in the company literally told this franchisee, shut it down. This is not ordained by the company. And he's like, no, please don't do that. I'm making so much revenue. They're like, no, you got to shut it down. And so finally he appealed to Cliff, the CEO at the time.
What a
And
story.
Cliff's like, okay, tell me what's going on. And he told him the idea. He's like, all right, and how much revenue are you making off this? And he like totally fell off. He said, I almost fell off my chair when he told me. And
Oh,
so I don't know the data. off the top of my head, but I want to say it was like 30%, or it ended up being like $1 billion idea.
And this person invented some frozen drink?
Yeah, frozen drink program, like all the slushies and frozen drinks programs that like Sonic's kind of known for.
Oh
That
my
was just some
gosh.
franchisee guy's idea, right? And so you and I, Kathy, know that like brilliance comes in different forms throughout the entire vertical, like throughout the entire company structure. But so many people get the idea that this person doesn't have the experience and they haven't been doing this forever. So it's not like people think this person's an idiot. It's just that, well, they don't have this kind of experience, so they don't understand the unique aspect of the problem. And it's the same problem with external communications. Not believing in the unique stories and unique angles and the unique abilities of your people is the same problem with external and internal communications. Same thing. Internally, it leads to bigger, better ideas that make you money. Externally, it leads to press and headlines and people finding you in search engines.
I love this. Can I ask you this? You might not say you feel like you're an expert, but I think you are. When I hear that story, I mean, I spent 18 years in corporate and I have some biases against it. One of them is, if you didn't follow protocol, we can't even listen to the idea. And
Right.
and some of that is such laziness. Some of it is such narrow-mindedness in the box. So you were kind and said, someone might think, well, you don't really have the experience to have $1 billion idea. But I think I ascribe kind of worse tendencies than that, which
Oh,
is,
sure. You're totally right.
you didn't follow
That's out there.
this, you didn't do this. Do you have any tips for how we, in our own businesses, when we have people that are working for us creating things, how we can excavate or identify wonderful ideas? Do you have any ideas about that?
Yeah. So it's I mean, it's really simple. It's just like bring a notebook and shut up. It is really, and ask follow-up questions. Listen, dig, ask follow-up questions, leave room for silence, write stuff down. I mean, even if you're writing gibberish, the other person across from you feels listened to when they see you writing stuff down. And I think and I did this. I totally did this. But the 3 keys are, well, I'll tell you what I did. I was a terrible listener. Empathy was kind of low on my priority list. I was not very trusting, and I realized these were
When
problems.
was this? When was this? Recently?
I don't know. I have it dated where I kind of came up with a solution. It was 2012. I wrote a piece in the Wall Street Journal about, I think it was 2012.
Wow, Justin.
And it was about some companies foster creativity, others fake it. And it came from this whole thing. I used to bring a notebook to, I started a graphic design company. So when you see the piece, you'll notice Test of Time Design. That's since closed.
Wow.
I made some big mistakes and stupid mistakes and realized I was really slow at design. So I pivoted over to this stuff, which I'm a lot better at. It's more fun.
Yeah.
But at the time, I was running into a problem. And the problem was I would go into a meeting with clients and I would work and show them what I came up with, and they'd shoot it down. And like it would cost me more money and time. And so I was like, what is the problem here? Like, I feel like it's an ego thing. I feel like they just want to get their 2 cents in there. And so I created this brilliant solution. The brilliant solution was I was going to bring a notebook and I was going to ask them as many questions as possible, right down to their favorite toothpaste. And then when I reveal the project to them, I would not allow them to speak because I would attribute the project to their ideas.
Was it ever from their ideas? Or
oh, yeah.
Okay.
I didn't know that. See, you're already getting ahead of me. You totally are seeing through this. I didn't even see it myself. And so I just figured it started working. It started working really well. I was making more money. Things were going faster. Clients were more happy. But what I didn't realize is I wasn't really fooling them at all. What had happened is I had trained myself to be a better listener.
Oh,
I was,
wow.
and I didn't even so that's why I say.
Wait a minute. Let me understand.
Yeah.
You came in and went, whatever the heck, this is not working. Let me go in there, take notes, pretend I'm listening, and I'm going to go off and do the thing I was normally going to do. But really, you were really listening.
Well,
is that it?
Yeah, it is. It is. My motivation was I'm just going to tie any arbitrary thing to this design.
He said toothpaste.
Yeah.
Mine is white. Let's do it.
Well, yeah, I mean, so like your favorite color is blue. So as you see, the background's blue. I figured, I'll just attribute these things to them and that'll take the ego thing off the table. And now they have ownership, and now they're not going to criticize it. And it worked, but it worked because I was truly listening to them and asking great follow-up questions and taking lots of notes and internalizing what they
Wow,
believe.
Justin.
And so in design, you'll hear a lot of designers say, everyone thinks they're a designer. Everybody thinks they're but people are. Like
Oh, I love
people
that.
people do know deep down inside what it feels like to be right and what something should look like. The problem is
Wow.
there's a breakdown in communication when they try to communicate that to you. That's the problem. It's not necessarily that their ideas are bad, it's that they don't know how to communicate emotional and intangible stuff. So the best way is to write things down, listen, ask follow-up questions, and never, ever, ever be thinking about your next question.
Oh my
Like
God. I'm riveted.
what,
I'm
you know, because
riveted
someone
because
like me, if I forget, like sometimes I feel like I'm going to forget a good question.
yeah,
Like if someone's talking and I'm like,
I jot down a word, like go
yeah,
back.
I gotta rush that in there. But your strategy, what you just talked about, is perfect. What I do is I write that question down, or I'll actually say, hey, you said something interesting. I'm just gonna write a note for myself. Hold on. Okay, please keep going. You know, it's so simple, but it works so well. I'm also spitting at this camera, and maybe it's like a 3D effect.
I thought it was. Can I amplify
Raining in
what I'm
here.
hearing, Justin? How are we doing on time? Oh my God, I could talk to you forever. When you said that, what ran through my mind was a lot of people will say, Kathy, I mean, big names will say that was the most fun or best interview I've had about my book. And other people will say, how do you do it? And I'll say, I'm literally listening at the edge of my seat. I mean, not
Yes.
every time, but when I want to learn, I don't have an agenda. I'm like, what did he just say? And I'm comfortable enough to go wherever the heck you're taking it. I mean, yes, sometimes I'll want to throw something in, but it did occur to me, I had to learn this in coaching. I am 100% listening to what you have to say, and I am going to take it. I have a process, I have a methodology, and we're going to go there in coaching. But first, I'm asking you a million questions, and it's from curiosity to inform what I'm going to do. Curiosity. I think so many people, I don't know what happened. Why are so many people, they've eclipsed the curiosity question? I think you even mentioned in your notes, what happened that we can't across divides? What happened to curiosity in our world, in our country? Okay, I'm making it way big, but let's go back. Is that right that you actually, I think in external communications, internal communications, design, leading your company, it's got to be first about curiosity, about what they are thinking, what they need. Am I right on that?
Yeah, I mean, sure, of course you're right. Kathy, of course you're right. It's that works for both sides, right? It works for like if I'm wanting press from you, I'm going to lead with natural curiosity, right? Things that I
Right.
think you're. And the only reason I'm going to figure that out about you is if I read your stuff and do some
And
research.
not just
Um,
perfunctorily, but,
right,
oh, what's she about?
right. And by the way, this is like the number one way to get like communications and like search engine traffic through communications. Like again, here this is
Tell
another
us more.
area that um, so many people want to make so technical. Like they want to talk about SEM Rush
Oh,
and Ahrefs and all these tools and all these technical things because they want to feel like if I just get this tool, it'll make me great at search engine optimization. And the fact of the matter is the best search engine strategy, like if you're out there and you're like, I want people to find me via Google, it's really easy. It's
okay,
really
listen up,
easy.
people.
It's again, and it comes back to listen to your customers.
Right.
Listen to the question they ask, write down the question exactly as they asked it, write a blog post answering that question. It doesn't have to be super technical. You don't need all the fancy tools. You need to just listen. And the thing is, you need to be constantly aware when you're interacting with clients, or even aware when you're at a cocktail party or not on the clock. Someone might say, "What do you do?" And you're like, "Oh, great, the what do you do question." And then you start talking to them, and then they ask a really good question,
Oh,
and you're like, whoa, that was a good, people, I call it mining customer curiosity. Because like when you mine customer curiosity, that is a gold mine. It
Oh,
is
love it.
pure gold.
I'm shaking my head because I'm about to redo this podcast website. And I reached out to a few people, and one person said, let's get all your Google Analytics. And I'm like, okay, great. I frankly didn't need to do that. I know so I've written 10 articles that have gotten whatever, 8 million views. Those are the articles that people are writing to me about every minute of the day. It's what they're interested in. Yes, data is important. I'm a researcher. Data is important. So you're not winging it. But if you're really listening to people, you shouldn't be shocked at what the analytics are showing. Don't you agree?
I totally agree. I mean, and there are surprises sometimes. There are things that start to go up the ranking. You're like, how many people are interested in this? But again, reading data can, in a way, kind of complement your listening strategy, right? But I do agree. Like some people's search engine optimization tactics are, they look at competitors' keywords and then they go after those things. And I'm like, well, I mean that does work if you're selling a product that's not that imaginative and doesn't really solve any problems, and it's just like another tennis shoe. Like, then yeah, you have to compete over competitor keywords, which is probably why I only work in emerging tech, because I don't have to worry about competitors. Like none of my clients really have competitors.
Wow.
My clients' only competitors is in a good, like, ignorance of the product.
Yeah.
And not believing it does what it does, which is almost a harder product or harder sell, because you can't say, well, we're selling a tennis shoe, Nike or Under Armour shoe stinks, and so we're making a better shoe. Here's why. You don't have that. You have to say, oh, this problem, we solved it. People are like, no, you didn't.
Wow. Fascinating. All right. Now, lead us to what's the final thing? Let's talk about personal brand building if you have a few more minutes, Justin.
Sure.
So, if you put in mind the listeners that many that I hear from, that let's say they're leaving corporate life and they want to do something, consult or private practice, they want to be a coach, they want to be a therapist, they want to have a lifestyle business. Oh my gosh. I don't know. Are you on Instagram?
No. I mean, I don't, my account might still be up there, but
I bring that up
hate
because,
Instagram.
interesting. I want to know why, but I've got a rockin' following on LinkedIn. That's my happy place. A little less so on Twitter, a little less so on Facebook. And I'm competitive. Like, wait a minute, let me get on Insta and see what I can do. And wow, it's a whole different world. But the thing that I see over and over, because I train coaches, is they have no concept of how they're different, what their niche is, what they really want to do. And in this case, I don't think it's what you're talking about, that they just don't see themselves as different. I think they haven't developed anything different, many of them. And I don't mean to be unkind. But like, for instance, you can't write a leadership book today and expect it to be a bestseller, and you don't have any new data, any new information. I mean, there's a lot of leadership experts from the history of time. So you do have to kind of get hip to your own inner narcissist. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's hard.
What am I saying? I'm rambling. Oh, so personal brands. What would you do with a brand that actually you don't think has a unique selling proposition, that really they're not doing anything?
I mean, it's the same thing for a company, right? They don't think they have any unique stories, so they go digging and they find them. You have to go digging into yourself, and this isn't like some like new agey religious fluffery. Like there is a lot of people have these deep ideas that they've suppressed because they think they're alone. They think they're the only one who thinks that, and so they hide that stuff and they don't talk about it out in the open. And then finally, someone does talk about it out in the open, and it's usually that person that, once they see it gains enough traction, kind of retweets it or shares it or talks to their friends saying, well, I was saying that in the 90s. And it's like, then why didn't you say it? You had a lot of people ready to hear that message clearly,
You would have a
and you
million
didn't
followers
say
now
it.
if you did it.
Right. Like,
All right,
and
I'm going
it's
to
people that,
challenge this,
yes,
Justin.
yeah, go
Can
ahead.
I? Where I was going is, I think you can get buzz, but let's say you're starting out as a coach. If you don't have chops that are different, I think I think, okay, let me rephrase. If you have, we dig deep and you have a story, like for me, you know my story, 18-year corporate career, it was a mess. I faced a lot of crises, reinvented marriage and family therapy, writing, speaking, training, and then seeing why are so many thousands of women facing the same thing. So I've written a lot about it in language that I think speaks to women, speaks to people. But it's not enough. If I want a robust coaching practice and training practice, it's not enough that I'm writing about it. People need help to overcome these challenges. So I have to have chops that do that. What I'm seeing in some of these new brands is they might even have a sizzling story, but they don't have the chops behind the sizzle. Does this make sense too?
Yeah. Results matter.
Results matter.
Like, and as hard as that is, no one cares about your theory or your ideas. They want tangible stuff.
Have you
Something
ever
they
worked
can.
with a client that you were able to get them? No, you wouldn't take them on probably.
No, probably
That
not.
you're taking on clients that have made a real impact
Right. Yeah, I mean,
Well,
that's
would
the
you
thing though.
say to a new brand that says, I mean, this is what I hear. I don't know how I'm different and I'm not, I don't think I am. What do you do with that?
I mean, if it's a company that truly isn't doing anything unique, if it was a company, right? They have a product that's truly not unique, then it's not a communication problem. It's a
No.
product problem. Like, there's nothing any brilliant marketer can do in the world that's going to help you. But if it's if it's a person and they're offering themselves on the same platter that everybody else is, yeah, you have zero hope of getting that message heard if you're the same as everybody else and you're just trying to get better press or get better attention, or the only hope you have at that point is drop hundreds of thousands of dollars in advertising and try to outrank people, right? Like,
Which
that's pretty much it.
I've seen that
Yeah.
happen.
I mean,
So
you
let's say
can
it was your sister-in-law and she was starting her coaching practice. And you sense that I don't really see much different in what you have as results or product. What would be the first thing you would have someone think about to help them?
get a better product, maybe. No, I mean, think about, again, it comes back to, think about who are you trying to help? Who are you trying to solve a problem for?
And if it's
And
everybody, go back to
are
the
you
drawing board.
solving the problem? And if you are solving that problem, then that's a great story. But if you're like, oh well, I just want to, and see, I had this problem. Like, I was doing design, I was too slow at it. People need design, but I burned myself out because there were people that were better and faster and cheaper. And
Marketing design, you mean, not
yeah,
design of
graphic
products.
design.
Wow,
Yeah.
graphic design. Wow,
Yeah, and
you're
so I had
talented.
to, it was a brutal bloodbath. Like, I had to fight every day, and it was like just slowly getting pushed back, and there was nothing I could do because it just wasn't my thing. It really wasn't. I went to school for it and I was trained and I know good design when I see it, but I was outgunned, outmanned, out everything. And there I wrote a blog post like 5 reasons you know when to quit,
Oh wow.
because everyone says, and here's what's really, I think this is dangerous. You can correct me if I'm wrong. I think the whole never give up thing is really stupid. I think it's really, really dangerous because
I
there
agree.
are a lot of reasons you should give up. Like, I think, and I'm going to riff here because I have them written down because I forget everything.
We're going to
But
post a link to it, definitely.
okay, sure. But like, one reason is if like your health is taking a hit, time to give up. That's not worth it. If
Right.
your relationships are taking a hit, time to give up. If you're not naturally good at it, if it's just not your thing, and no matter how hard you work, because there are some things I'm not going to be, and I never was going to be an NBA star. This is not in the cards. So the never give up mentality would
I agree
probably
with
have
you.
like run me into the grave. You know,
I agree with you.
so
And
there
another thing, I think I wrote a post, I'll link to it, 5 things you should never compromise on. One of them is your soul. If
yeah,
every iteration of this thing, you are prostituting yourself,
yep,
selling your soul. And, I think you're a walking example of it. So am I. And I think you would agree. We can be really good at something we don't enjoy doing in the end.
right,
And
yes,
look
that's one
how
of the reasons.
good you are at this. And you have had a radio show. You're very talented. Most of us are multi-talented. So to put all the eggs in that one basket and not be flexible and not think maybe I need a pivot. like I think people say, if you have a plan B, you're sabotaging your plan A. I don't really agree with that. Give everything you got to plan A, but if it's hurting you and it's not working and you're bloodying yourself against it,
Then kill it. Go to
kill
plan
it.
B.
Try.
And the thing is, the plan B might actually become a plan A. That sounds hilarious, but I
Well,
think
I think you're right.
the problem we make is by assuming it was plan A to begin with. Like when I started my design company, I asked my dad, like, because he was a successful dentist, and I asked him, I was like, did you always know you wanted to be that? He's like, yeah, I did. I was like, what would you have done if that wasn't in the cards? He's like, I I don't I always knew that was the thing I was supposed to do, and I did it, and he loved his job. He loved his job.
Wow.
And so I was like, well, I know this graphic design business is like my thing. I know it will happen. And I just, because I bought into that, I lied to myself.
Oh,
And now looking back, I was like, my gosh, I am so glad that is dead. And the problem is we have these internal skills, passions, and desires and things that make us exciting, but then we try to apply them to the real world somewhere,
right.
and that's where we make a big mistake usually. And so that's the mistake I made for my first graphic design company. Like,
Wow.
I made the mistake in taking these things, the ability and the desire to help people communicate, but I just did it visually, and
Right.
which wasn't the best fit. I made the
And
wrong jump.
there's all right. We're going to leave you with this, people. I talk about in when you're pivoting your career, there's 5 steps. Step back, let go, say yes, explore it, and then create it smart. The explore piece is the thing nobody even knows how to do. So they think I'm miserable in marketing in corporate life. I want to be graphic designer, but they only project onto it a fantasy of what it is.
Sure,
They
sure.
haven't tried it on in micro step ways that they're not risking everything.
Yep.
So it's a Buddhist idea that don't overly attach to any outcome. I've got to make it a success in my graphic design. Yes, you're going to give it your all, but when you overly attach, you just cut out all of those potential opportunities and doors that are screaming to you. But your dad, some people, was his father a doctor
No,
or a
his father
dentist?
was a milkman
So
for
he
the local
really
dairy.
something about dentistry
Yeah,
spoke to him.
he like would take pencils and pens and stuff, and like set his stuffed animals on when he was a little kid on chairs and like work on their teeth. Isn't that weird?
How did he even
What a
learn of
freak!
what a dentist was?
I don't know. I love my dad. He's genius. I love
He's a
him.
genius.
But I'm
He
just like,
raised
you
you.
were working on your stuffed animals as a kid, really?
That was a calling.
My
Dad
wife
had a
is a music
calling.
teacher, and she lined her stuffed animals up on the stairs and would conduct them.
My God.
Isn't
I
that crazy?
remember in our basement we had a little chalkboard, and guess what I was doing on the chalkboard?
What?
I was teaching. But I have to say the happiest thing I do is teaching my course. Even though it's coaching, it's teaching. So
Coaching and teaching,
woohoo. I
yes.
don't know what we've really talked about here, but it's everything. And what are you going to leave us with, Justin? Where do we find out all about you? Where do we go? Where do we see your incredible posts? Where do we listen to your podcast? Where do we send people?
It's really easy. JustinKBrady.com. Now, if you can't remember, because, K, gosh darn it, I can't
That
get,
threw me. I
anyway,
was going to say
I know. Oh,
justinbrady.com.
I know. Justin Brady lives in Massachusetts and won't give up his URL. So I'll get him one of these days. But
Keep
so
trying.
that's the easiest way. You can just Google me, Justin Brady. I'll come up. It's really, really easy to find. But here's what everybody needs to do: open your podcast app. You've already subscribed to this podcast, so I know you're on it. And go search for Justin Brady Show and hit subscribe. That's what everybody can do. That's what I want.
That is a wonderful ask.
I just
People
want to
do
see
it.
my numbers go up. So I'm like, yes, I'm doing
Google
something
Analytics.
right.
Whee! Oh my God, what a blast. Please come back again. We could talk
I'd
about
love to.
anything and everything.
Next
I
time we'll
love
talk about religion and politics.
God, can't wait. No,
I'd have
you should
fun.
take a Valium before that. All right, my friends. If you're not inspired, I throw up my hat. What are your questions? And I always say this: if you don't have questions, I'm not doing my job. There should be something that's been tweaked in you or spurred on. Wait a minute, I don't understand what he said, and I do have a plan A. And should I get anything that we've talked about? We'd love to hear. And I have a feeling, Justin, you're probably pretty available. Maybe to answer a question or two if someone posts it where I post this on.
Oh yeah.
Do that?
Oh yeah.
All right.
I'm really easy to get in touch with too. There's a menu button at the bottom of the website.
Great.
If you hit that and hit contact, it buzzes my phone directly.
How kind. How
Super
generous.
cool. Well, we have like a little secret technology built in there to keeps away bots, but it's
Wow.
pretty
See,
slick.
look at you go. Emerging technology. All right, people, ask your questions of Justin and me if you're interested. Can't thank you enough for being here. Hope it inspires you in these times of uncertainty. We're going to
Thanks,
grab
Kathy.
control. Thank you, Justin. All right, everybody, have a great week. See you next time.